And we're going to actually transition real quick to Carmen Gaines, who works at Local Color. Just one moment. Hello, Carmen. How are you doing?
Good. I got like instantly nervous and now I'm good again.
Okay. It's like a split second thing, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
oh no, it's starting, and then you're like, okay, it's not that bad. You're born and raised here in San Jose, correct? And you are a alum at the ninth Emerging Arts Professional cohort, and you install a lot of like interesting work when it comes to understanding equity frameworks. And you've been influenced by a radical Black feminist, which I think is really really dope. And I'm just glad to have you here. So thanks for being part of this. We're gonna talk about some interesting things, the world of nonprofits and grant writing and project management. So can you tell us a little bit about how you found yourself in the world of nonprofits and project management?
Yeah, it started pretty early. I feel like I haven't wanted to do a lot of things like work wise. I remember in kindergarten, I wanted to be a therapist. And then I just realized like that would be really difficult for me to handle. But I feel like it does relate to art in a way and just kind of like sharing stories and communicating our feelings and experiences in that regard. Um, but it definitely carried through high school. I went to Henry T. Gunderson High School, and I was in Associated Student Body all 4 years. And junior year, I was the dance director. Senior year, I I ran for class president. I didn't get it, and I was like, "Can we make the pep squad?" Just so I could have like something fun to do. Um, and after graduating, I ended up deciding to stay in San Jose. Just like circumstance led to that, and just my feelings at the time led to me wanting to stay at home. And I just walked out, printed a resume, what I had so far, some nannying gigs, working at a pizza place, being on ASB, and walk that around like all of Sofa Street, to all the galleries. And I got one yes. Just happened to walk to Makla at the right time, and they were looking for interns. And I was a business and an administrative intern there and helped galleries sit. And I got to work with Joey Reyes and Rhiannon and meet Angie, get a little art handling, go, attend my first auction. So it was really fun and opened my eyes to like what the kind of behind the scenes world is.
Awesome. So can you talk to us about the importance of like nonprofits in the art professional realm? Because this entire time we've been talking about businesses and kind of more of the um, classic entrepreneurial capitalist structure. But you know, what is kind of the role that a nonprofit would play when it comes to an art professional kind of coming up?
Nonprofits definitely don't exist outside of the capital realm. By definition, in charitable law, it's not the point of it is to expense all the income that it receives through foundations, governments, funding, funds that are specific for IRS recognized tax exempt entities. So that's kind of the grander scale of what a nonprofit is. And how that connects is that like we're here to provide services, because like an art professional could be so many things. Like you can be the preparator that's working in there, you could be an administrator, which is more of my role, you could be a curator, you could be a storyteller, you could be like a healer and someone who just needs space. And there's all these resources that are funded through specific charitable funds, through the 5% that is legally obliged to be philanthropic from like larger corporations accounts. And we're kind of that middle place for those funds to be distributed. And I'm definitely aware of the I don't know, kind of abuses of power in that realm, and the people at these organizations matter, in that kind of execution and how those resources get distributed. Um, and yeah, even just my short time, I've been able to see that and really be impacted. There is this publication called Color Theory, written by or edited and written by Maya Gomez and Vinri Castillo. And it just kind of talks about like the importance of paying people equitably, because you do want to make sure that um, just those resources, if it's money, if it's space, if it's the accounting support, tax advice, all those things should be accessible through a nonprofit.
So can you? So it, I do like that everyone's pets coming in at certain times to join in. Like you kind of turn into like the Godfather with the cats in your lab talking about nonprofits. And so the way that I understand what you're saying is that it's basically like through these different from government, foundation, and different groups, these nonprofits basically expend money to for these different projects. How does like the regular average Joe or Jane artist get a hold of these kind of funds? Like, how do you find out about it? How do you get engaged with it? Like, how do you kind of what's like the first step to find out where this money is and how you can get a hold of it?
Yeah. Well, for my second job or my second job in the art world after Makla, I found my second internship on California Arts Council. I check California Arts Council regularly. It has everything from grants, job opportunities. In our last breakout session, we were talking about residencies. Sometimes I see those get popped up there. Um, and so that's one way. There are resources out there, and sometimes to like receive a grant and to do charitable work, or a work that's both artistic and meant to provide a service, you don't need to be a 501c3 or a nonprofit, but sometimes you do. And so this is kind of a nice segue that I appreciate, to bring up what my role is transitioning at Local Color to be, kind of just overall memberships management, and working in the realm of fiscal sponsorship, where you can be an autonomous project. So for example, Jai, if you don't mind, like back in the day, like starting seeing things, if there's a component to that, it's about like building community, and it's not necessarily for profit, and it's for to start a publication so you can archive the work that you've done, and there's a grant that is looking to help kind of save and tell stories, but requires you to be a 501c3. You can work with a nonprofit and have access to those funds. The funds get directed to the nonprofit, you know, via seeing things, for example, and those funds get distributed to you, as well as the like supports that come along with having established business. And that is the other side of nonprofit. It is a lot of paper. It's a lot of proper tax documentation, saving receipts, having meetings, networking with folks. And so that is a way that an individual through fiscal sponsorship can have access to larger sums of funds.
Nice. And what do you think? Like, how would you consider the impact of the work that you do? Because local color does a lot of like mural work and different things like that. But what do you think are the physical, like as far as the infrastructure of the city, and then the community impact of this kind of work?
I think art, well, definitely in terms of infrastructure, being a nonprofit and with charitable law, a lot of foundations say that you cannot directly engage in, a political activity. But art as advocacy, art as a way to deliver messages, I think is one of the impact, and it just helps you connect with other people, like if they identify with, a poster that you're creating, or a mural that you've painted out in space, or you're having a program and a service, and the people that attend, they're there for a reason, because they felt some kind of connection, and they really want to be there. Those kind of lay a foundation for what can happen next. And one of my favorite of those radical Black feminist speakers is Adrienne Marie Brown. If you haven't read Emergent Strategies or Pleasure Activism or We Will Not Cancel Us, I highly recommend it. I'm sure they're like online as well as on in print. But I read that. I got it from like someone at the curatorial council when I was working at Southern Exposure in San Francisco, and it's kept popping up. It popped up again in EAP, but it talks about the ideas of like, it kind of goes into like phenomenology a little bit, and like we're all these like fractals, and the small ripples that we can make in our personal lives with our personal decisions can ripple out to affect larger structures at B, and just making space to like have conversations, to like start that, and to meet people that want to work on whatever you're doing and move that forward. I feel like nonprofits can be just like a starting place, and like just one of those ripples in that motion. But specifically working with local color, um, I attend a lot of like planning department meetings and like other city governance meetings, and we've collaborated with Parks and Rec and like all these different sectors of San Jose's local government. And I personally feel like that work would be a little bit too soul draining for me to like directly participate in. But I'm still kind of like running parallel to some of that, and have like a greater awareness. So I feel like I'm just kind of understanding more about how systems unrelated to art per se work, um, through nonprofit, and through specifically like what Local Color does, working with developers to activate spaces that are eventually going to be demolished. So I've kind of learned a lot about like the permitting process and what it takes, and how there are stages for all of us residents to engage in that process as well. And it can actually have some effects for sure, because there's some empty lots that have been empty for a long time now. And there's definitely a story behind all of that.
So, of the things that you learn, what are some that like you think would be important for, say, an artist who's part of this like this discussion right now, who's trying to figure out, okay, I have this passion project I want to do, but I need money, and there's no way I can like start a business from this. I just want to be able, like, I can make it come alive. All I need is the financial means. How would they even, like, how do they get from that point to actually being able to have, like, to write a grant and develop a grant? Like, what are some of the basics of getting that started?
Um, so you already have an idea, so that's like number one. Any of the passion to want to do it, that's already moving in the right direction. And with anything, it just takes like a team of people. And um, fiscal sponsorship is like not entirely new. So Local Color, it's new to us, but there's Intersection for the Arts up in Oakland, and they've been established for a while. SV Creates, I think, on occasion does fiscal sponsorship as well. Um, so there are some resources like already like local here in the South Bay, and to look online as well. Center for Cultural Innovation, I think cci.org. They're another great resource that again doesn't require, they offer a lot of opportunities that don't require you to be a nonprofit to be eligible for their grants. And from CCI, you can, and California Arts Council, you can definitely like trail off and start finding these like other funding opportunities. And typically it's kind of like in the beginning of the year, kind of sprinkles out sometime in the summer, and then definitely in the fall is like kind of the thicker grant seasons. But yeah, please, I'm here. I'm local in San Jose, so if you're based in Santa Clara County in the South Bay, definitely down to have a conversation. Um, and just building that team, and sometimes you can just like rely on the folks that are in your community. Like, what's the scale that you want? Like, is this sustainable? Can you pull up at a table at a park and accomplish what you want to do? Or if it really does take like $15,000, $30,000 to accomplish it, then yes, there are grants out there, and there is a way to access those funds. You're not going to get it by not applying. You may not get it if you do apply, but if you apply and you receive that award letter, it is such an exciting feeling. Yes, I love that feeling. It keeps you going through all those other dark months for sure.
As a grant recipient, I know that exact feeling of just like, yes, I wrote the thing and now I have the money to do the thing. And just something I would add is like, I think there's something important about just doing it and just like starting the project and seeing how far you can go until you actually need a dollar sign, because that's just a great way to really recognize how it's important. And you can develop more, you can better develop your narratives in the future if you continue to just like work on these projects and like, kind of like developing a network. And we'll get to that next. How do you create a network? How do you even present yourself as a creative professional? Because I think there is kind of like a difference between a DIY artist, and I feel like I went that transition, but DIY artist who doesn't really have any formal training of any sort, and then you kind of go into this realm where you kind of like know how to present yourself, and you know how to write a grant, you know how to write like how do you even start, how do you make that transition, or what are the tools to help to make you more have more efficacy as a art professional?
Um, you definitely don't have to go to school to be an art professional. That is the path that I took. My dad was born in Oklahoma, met my godfather, flunked out of OU, moved to Oakland, and then finished at San Jose State. And they've been working at IBM since then till now. So I had that example in my life. And my sister, I have an older sister, who's 2 years older. She went to college, and um, right after high school, I was like not totally sure what I was doing with life, and so I ended up, being able to apply for, FAFSA and go to De Anza College, and then um, yeah, I don't know. Like art has definitely been like really therapeutic for me. And I knew that like just being an artist isn't what I wanted to do for like work. And that's kind of how I found like art history and like more on like the nonprofit side. Um, but I would say like San Francisco State was like my first community. Like I really got to know like a lot of my professors well, and the students that were in those 2 years that I was there, we were in like sharing classes together. So I feel like that was my first arts community. And then after graduating, I knew that like I was still living in San Jose. Still haven't lived anywhere else from San Jose, but I knew that like if I left San Francisco at that time, I probably wouldn't have gone up there as much. So I applied for an internship at Southern Exposure in the Mission, and that was a curatorial internship. And the way that they organized all their shows, there was a curatorial council. So I got to, on a monthly basis, sit with all these like really inspiring artists and emerging curators, and just learning from them how they like theorized and like talked about their work and received feedback, and um, like how significant those opportunities were them, and how significant it was for like all the artists that were featured in their shows. And I just really wanted to be a part of that. And just other folks that I met, and I learned about the emerging arts professionals through that one of the people that worked at Southern Exposure was an alumni and like really encouraged me to go. And yeah, that was really formidable. It was like 9 months. And at the end of it, it did feel close. Like I'm not a parent, but it felt close to like fostering a child. And it's like this new life afterwards. Like we cried together. You know, it was a crazy year. That was like, you know, the year, was it the first year? It might have been like the first year that Trump got elected. So it was just like a really emotional time, and to be around other people, you know, coming from it, from like publications, like working at other nonprofits, working at for-profit spaces, working at like SF MoMA, and just like hearing all these experiences and like getting to meet other folks. And I still talk to people from this cohort now. And if I need something, if I need to like get connected with a grant writer, you know, they can help me. And just seeing what they're doing, you know, really helps. Um, One definite silver lining um, from the pandemic is Common Field is another really cool national network. And you know, it used to have to pay to be a member and to attend their events, and it's national. So you would have to travel. And last year was the first year that it's online. It was online, and it's going to be online again in November. And yeah, it's just like another just amazing opportunity to like learn from other people. Like I don't think that art is you know, sometimes you create in isolation, but um it doesn't typically stay in that space. It typically involves a lot of people. And you know, being in an arts nonprofit, it's no different. You know, there's a whole community of people with different focuses and different avenues and different accesses to resources and different ways of doing things. And it's really, I love learning from all of them.
That's great. Could you kind of provide, like, even if it's like a bullet list or just kind of a couple examples for South Bay artists, because your focus is in the South Bay, and that's like Gen Arts is really focusing on South Bay, Santa Clara County creatives and things like that. What are some like basic resources and tools that that folks here can like get, like people and things they should just be aware about, like law, like, you know, rules that they should know about when it comes to project management, and you know, getting like, how do they get started to like kind of knowing some of the politics of the creative scene?
Sure. I wanted to just go back a little bit to like high school. Just recently, there was an alumni meeting for the ELC Rotary program. Like, and almost vaguely remembered it, but you like go and like spend a weekend, and I think there's like several different meetings throughout the year, and you do like a business pitch. And I totally forgot that I participated in this program, but I just recalled. So if you're still in high school, I believe it's like juniors or seniors, look up the ELC Rotary, because then I was on the alumni call, and like someone from the Silicon Valley Foundation was like on the call, and like I just put in there like, oh, like who ended up in nonprofits, just to like network in that way. And there's also groups like Gen Arts and Molly and SV Creates, and Content does a good job of like just sharing a little bit of everything. So kind of just like knowing some of the folks that are doing work now, because you might not, you know, maybe you can just like join someone on their pursuit, and if your idea feels like extremely aligned or parallel with someone else's. And other rules, you know, I think like Jai like really hit it on the head. Like taxes, like they can be important, especially for a nonprofit or if you're using charitable funds. But I've been seeing like really great examples of transparency online. I believe it's either Feed the Block or like Community Got Us. They like post their receipts after they ask for you know, donations to things. I think that's like a really beautiful practice.
Awesome. Yeah, that's Community Goddess who does that, and you can follow them on Instagram. They're a really great organization, as well as Feed the Block. There's a lot of mutual aid groups that focus on donations for the houseless and dealing with a lot of socioeconomic issues when it comes to things like police violence and poverty and income inequity. So just a plug for them. Once I figure out how to use the chat again, I will post it on there. Was there anything else that you wanted to plug or talk about, Carmen?
I've been reading, I feel like this kind of goes into it, and maybe this is like also like the prospects of San Jose, but I'm currently reading How We Got Free, and it's a set of interviews from the Combahee River Collective. And I guess they were one of like the original like users of the term intersectionality, and just kind of promoting this idea that our identities may be very varying, but our circumstances often have a lot of similarities and overlap. And I'm just looking forward, when we can connect in person again, but still take these opportunities to connect in line, to just like really discover that like within our community. San Jose is just such a big, beautiful city, like over 1 million people, and just so much going on all the time, that there's just so much here already that we can just keep discovering, and hopefully like forming that idea of the future together, because time will continue moving for all of us.
Wow, that was a very profound way to end this. Thank you so much, Carmen. We're going to have another breakout session. Everyone thank Carmen again for being part of this. We'll have Dana and Yori coming up next, but we're gonna have a breakout session about how to build stable income, and Kristen can give a little breakdown of how the breakout session will work in case you are new to the breakout rooms.